Hello and welcome to You Talking to Me. The European Parliament is seriously concerned about the expansion of Russian propaganda in Europe. How should the EU respond? That's what we are going to discuss today in the European Parliament with our guest, Mrs. Anna Fotyga from the European Conservatives. Hello, Mr. Petras Austrevicius from the group of the Liberals, Mr. Eugen Freund, Social Democrats, and we're also joined by Beata Plomecka from Polski Radio. Hello and welcome to all of you. We are going to start with the rapporteur of the European Parliament on this topic, Mrs. Fotyga. As I said, the European Parliament is seriously concerned about the expansion of the Russian propaganda in Europe. While you worked on your report, what was the most alarming example of Russian propaganda you are aware of? Can you make a concrete example?
Yes, thank you for this question. First of all, the report deals with two areas of propaganda against the EU and its member states. One is a state actor, Russian Federation. Second area are non-state and clearly defined non-state actors with very vicious influence, radical Islamist organizations like Daesh, other like Al-Qaeda, and surely my main experience is with Russian propaganda.
Can you make a concrete example where you would say this is a clear example of Russian propaganda in Europe, which you see as a real threat?
Yes, the example is Russian aggression on Ukraine, before annexation of illegal annexation of Crimea, during, after it, the wave of propaganda, including pictures of drunken Ukrainians. Drunken people, drunken enemies is a very special issue. Also, Polish generals who perished in Smolensk catastrophe were portrayed as drunken ones. So that is a special way of humiliating people, enemies, targets of these attacks. And these cases are portrayed within the Stratcom East works, like Disinformation Review and Disinformation Digest.
We will come back to this unit later. The propaganda is one thing, the efficiency of propaganda is another thing. Mr. Austrevicius, what do we know about how efficient is this propaganda? If I watch Russian TV, I could still not believe what I'm seeing.
First of all, my sincere congratulations to my colleague Anna on her report. It's a major step forward in understanding the ways the official Russian ideology reaches the European Union and the West in general. The efficiency of the Kremlin's propaganda, or distorted reality as they try to present to the European Unions, let's not underestimate it. You have a critical mind. I mean, you are a professional. You know, I mean, the essence of making news and working with information. But many people, since we live increasingly in post-factual society, people don't care about facts. I mean, people know quite little about statistics, about things which are in a foreign country, and if you come with the prefabricated lies, with the fake information, and you do it in such a powerful way, in not just presenting news, but incorporating news into the cultural program, introducing some figures who use that and transfer that information to the wider public, you are really reaching the minds of people. So that's why I'm really skeptical about our ability to counteract, but I see increasing pressure from some sources, as Kremlin, as non-state actors, to reach minds of Europeans.
This is described in the report. Mr. Freund, what's your assessment here? How serious is the problem? concerning...
Well, there's no doubt that this exists. I mean, and that it is a grave problem for all of Europe. But also we have seen just recently in the election campaign in the United States that people live in a bubble. And they usually listen to or watch or write to or observe just the media that confirms their opinion. And that makes it so difficult. But this is one of the reasons why I have asked from the beginning that we should take polls in these various countries where this is particularly prevalent to find out who is watching, how many people are watching.
Polls.
Well, we don't know. I mean, we don't know. But it would be additional information to see, what are the numbers? Who are these people and how can we address them?
There are statistics, you said, there are statistics.
Well, look, I mean, at every hotel in
There
Europe...
is Russia Today.
There is Russia Today.
Yeah.
I mean, Russia Today has
Every
a market
language,
of
every
700 million.
But the question is who turns it on.
It's
I mean,
huge. That's
Yeah.
huge. 100 countries are
watching?
covered.
The question is who is watching, Mr. Freund, and the question is who is really accepting the message.
Well, that is the problem. I mean, if you have someone who is already inclined to believe what he is seeing, then, of course, he's the one who then accepts this message and also distributes the message, which makes it even more problematic, of course, because then, more and more people will learn of that lies, distortions, whatever you have.
So clearly we need more
We need a little
polls
more information.
on that, and we will
knowledge
discuss
about sources as well.
As well as.
we will
Yeah,
discuss
so
about the
manipulation.
response Europe should give to this.
In a minute,
Beata.
but I've got a question on the works on the report, because I'm really curious, because we're talking, bearing in mind the European Parliament, some MEPs defending Russia, some criticizing Moscow. For some, this is a delicate issue, if I may put it in that way. How was it? A question to Mrs. Fotyga. How was it? Was it difficult to manage a consensus? If you can describe the process.
Well, first of all, I have to thank excellent shadow rapporteurs. Both are here. And I think that shadows contributed in really extensive way to quality of this report, so I'm very grateful. Yes, it was tough because the report itself was a target of predominantly Russian propaganda, because amazingly it was not even one remark about this part referring to Daesh, or there were also some words dedicated to organized crime, for example, traffickers of migrants, I think, or traffickers of arms, of narcotics, drugs. But no even words. All propaganda was coming from Kremlin-oriented media or groups of influence. Yes, it was tough. The debate was tough, yet I'm really satisfied with majority achieved in voting.
I have to jump in here, because my core reservation from the very beginning was that we should not mix ISIS and Russia into one report.
But there is a clear distinction.
There's a clear distinction, but there's also point number 15.
Let's not discuss this detail maybe now. Let's maybe focus on Russian propaganda,
That is one of the reasons why we abstained, because we did not want to have
this mixed up.
the terrorist organization in the same context as a state organization, because that is very important.
Allow me to clear it. Yes, we heard this voice of the socialist group. I thought that it was worthwhile to clearly divide, to satisfy my colleagues that there is absolutely no linkage to state actors and no state actors.
Let's come back to the Russian propaganda.
Let's come back to the Russian propaganda. You've mentioned, Mrs. Fotyga, this East Stratcom team. This is also incorporated in the report.
Yes.
And we have nowadays the situation: 11 people in Brussels with a small amount of money and an army of Well, let's call it soldiers of propaganda.
That amazing achievement.
Okay.
Of course, I'm very much in favor of strengthening the institutional power, so broadening the scope, giving attention. That is why this report is, let's say, double-fold, because we feel that the same group should be created to deal with Southern propaganda. And we would like to have appropriated special line of money dedicated to this.
How come? What is the...
It was already voted, and with huge majority to appropriate money.
Anna is completely
What
right.
is it you really expect this unit to do?
Well, I mean, there are probably two good news, I mean, which we produced this year about the overall issue. Firstly, I mean, we voted strongly in support of budgetary allocations, which are increased.
Yes.
We were given more money.
Yes.
Now it should be a
done.
clear split in the group East, South, and I hear that it should be special focus even on Western Balkans. I mean, we see, I mean, more and more Russian involvement on that one. I mean,
we will talk about that
Montenegro,
a bit later.
for example, yes. And the second one is this report. It's a recognition that we need not just understanding, but we need a response. We need to have instruments and analytical instruments, critical instruments to present to our public something of different. I mean, to explain in which ways sometimes Russian and increasingly systematically reaches the western part of Europe.
The last thing that we need is countering propaganda with another propaganda. I mean, it will just not work. First of all, it will not work. It will be counterproductive, you know, if we do this the same manner as the Russians do it. So we have to be very careful with what kind of tools are we using and how are we using those tools.
And what should this unit exactly do? What would it be the exact action?
We also should not forget, we must not forget that in all of those countries we do have solid public broadcasters that report the truth as it is. So it's not that Russia stands alone there as the sole reporter of the news. We always have, you know, in all the other countries, other forces.
And that's exactly a task for Stratcom East. So that their role is, first of all, with their knowledge, exposing manipulations, half-truths, lies against EU and member states, and create a network of cooperation also with states, member states, and first of all of member states, because knowledge is there.
And I can only support. I mean, we are much in favor of providing more support to public broadcasters in Europe. I mean, independent broadcasting and freedom of expression is a fundamental value. I mean, our broadcasters are far from using propaganda. I don't call it propaganda, it's broadcasting from independent sources. I mean, if Russia had such an independent public broadcaster, probably we would never have a problem of this kind. I mean, we are dealing now. But the emphasis on independent journalism and strengthening probably the capabilities of those journalists, because we acknowledged after the economic crisis there was a downturn in providing support and capacity for independent journalism in Europe. It's clear.
The situation is different in the European Union and the Eastern Partnership, right? Of course. So we are talking about strengthening also the media in countries in the Eastern Partnership.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, time is running. We have a question on this unit we were talking about coming from Latvian radio from Artyom Skonovs.
When you look at the composition of the Strategic Communication Unit at the External Action Service, you can see that it's mostly Eastern and Central Europe that is interested in this subject. What does it say about the rest of the EU? Is there still a lack of understanding and even resistance from the side of some member states like Italy, Greece or France? And even High Representative Mogherini seems to be rather skeptical about the need of such actions.
Well,
I'm not sure that this is true. I mean, she was very adamant last night.
Yeah, I think she was very clear last night, and I really appreciate her stance.
Okay, and
on this
about
subject.
the balance in the union.
The balance in the union is that some countries have, let's say, long-standing interests in the south, and they are more preoccupied with the issues that are coming out. The problem is to give equal attention to all security challenges that we face, and that is why the combined effort on both directions to be present, because we feel that we Eastern Europeans, Central East Europeans, have to inform our colleagues of the western part of Europe. And we have to be probably also more aware of issues that come out
Is the
from the
West
south.
underestimating?
No. What I was about to say is, I mean, we must not forget that some countries border Russia, you know,
Yeah,
and it's a totally different situation than for Portugal, you know. But on the other hand, I mean, we see this influence of Russia in many Western European countries.
Absolutely.
Perhaps not as much on the media side, but how they support the right-wing parties in France, for example. I mean, there is clearly a connection. You could hear that yesterday also by the people who spoke for the Le Pen people. You know, it was clearly that they were furious that we were pointing our fingers at Russia,
right.
you know, because they need them. They need Russia.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's much better now, as I must admit. This knowledge is more equal.
But still,
We were
quite a
talking-
space to improve.
Yeah.
You were talking about media, and in the report, the European Parliament says that you should audit efficiency of funds granted to media projects, and you mentioned one, that's Euronews. What's the background of this? Do you have any knowledge that Euronews is involved in Russian propaganda? Or?
Yes, I do have this knowledge, and my knowledge is based on a study ordered by AFET in police department, and this study indicates so EU institution and internal EU Parliament institution exposes the cases of absolutely amazing bias information, for example, around Ukraine, around Georgia, war in Georgia, around other important, also very questionable equity composition of Euronews. So taking into account that Russian Kremlin-controlled state actor is a part of equity.
Okay, so you ask for a study on that. Last
it was
question.
done, and I base my knowledge on this.
We are almost at the end. Last question. Donald Trump won the elections in the US. As we all know, he's supposed to be closer to Russia than the current American president. What do you expect? Will Russian propaganda be reduced with Trump being president? What do you expect?
Well, the problem is that we don't know how. I mean, I've lived in the United States for a long time, and I've observed American presidents since 40 years. The problem is with this president, we don't know, you know, because he has no political paper that you can look up what is he thinking in terms of. I mean, we know a couple of things from his campaign, but even now he's rescinding already before he even gets the job. You know, he's rescinding some of them. So we don't know. I mean, the problem that we have is that if it really comes to a crisis, to a serious world crisis, you know, he will be in the Situation Room, and there will be generals on this side and generals on the other side, and he's the one to decide then, and that makes it really, really very, very difficult.
Mrs. Fotyga, do you expect any changes on Russian propaganda with Trump being president?
Well, first of all, Poland has, we Poles have long-standing experience in working with any American administration. We are traditionally transatlantic. But surely we were monitoring closely the election campaign in the United States. We monitor closely nominations and see various trends as we are first of all very much focused on the issue of being secure from the not only Russian propaganda but direct security threat to and what I favor really much are let's say any statements that come about presence, American presence in our part of Europe. So the results of NATO Warsaw Summit, it's the most important issue for
which
us.
is also important for the Balkans, I guess. How do
Baltics.
Baltics, absolutely.
Sorry, Baltics. How do they feel?
Well, I think we all, I mean, on both sides of Atlantic, Europeans and Americans, far away from understanding newly established Trump standard for dissemination of information, of his position, and so on and so forth. Mr. Trump used in a different way social media. He's a new kind of politician or president-elect in the United States of America. He was very quick somehow to pick up social media pieces coming from Kremlin. Yeah. And that's why we have to be worried as long as it will be repeated. I hope campaign is over. I mean, he will have to face a new reality as a president of the biggest power, but I'm not sure that it will not repeat itself. So that's why we have to work with them. But I am far from being completely content with the situation.
So I'm sure we could go on discuss about the new American president more. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you all. Thank you all, and see you soon on You Talking to Me.